I'm sitting here today and I'm reflecting on what I seen on the prime time programme last night, and it was about protesters. And there was a lot of complaints about protesters and the way they were protesting. And the guests on the show was in particular Pat Rabbitte and Joe Costello. And Pat said that it was the worst sort of protesting that he'd seen in his 30 years in politics. He went on to say that the way they were acting, protesting at TD's clinics, it was mob rule. They were marching into the TD's clinics, they were frightening people and all the rest of it, and he'd never seen anything like it before. Well, I'd like to remind Pat, I'm around a long time now, and I'm in my 50s, and I remember Pat and Eamon Gilmore when they were members of the Workers' Party Sinn Féin. And I'd just like to remind Pat, there's no way that protesters on the streets today protesting against Irish Water would do what some of his own colleagues did in the Workers' Party Sinn Féin back in the day when Pat was a young man. When Pat and Eamon Gilmore were young men, they belonged to a party who actually funded themselves by conducting bank robberies. So they weren't walking into clinics and intimidating people. They were walking into banks with balaclavas and guns, and they were robbing people. They were intimidating people. There was racketeering, there was extortion, there was even murder. And there was murder carried out by people who belonged to Eamon and Pat's organisation. And the only time there was a leader of a political party murdered in this country was when a man called Seamus Costello of the Irish Republican Socialist Party was actually assassinated. And he was assassinated by a member of the Workers' Party Sinn Féin. So I'd like to remind Pat, how he can say it's the worst he's seen in 30 years. He's been hypocritical again, as he was before the last election. So now we move on to Joe Costello. And Joe again complained about protesters doorstepping politicians and all the rest of it. And what I'd like to say to Joe is, you see, Joe, politics now has turned into an industry. And you're the prime example. Because you and your wife earned hundreds of thousands between you. While people, as we know, are being evicted for their homes, you and your wife do nothing to help. It was pointed out to you that you were part of a protest on the streets with dealers many years ago, that you seen scuffles with police and all the rest. It was pointed out to you, and you said, yeah, it was in a different era. It was in protesting on the street. But Joe, there's a protest in Cork today. People from the Hub are down there. People from the National Citizens Movement, the Irish Democratic Party, and they're trying to highlight the many evictions. I think there's more than 90 up in the courts in Cork today. You're not on nowhere to be seen. And you see, people that are being evicted from your home are looking from their homes, are looking at you, Joe, and look at the industry that you and your wife is in. And you've earned hundreds of thousands out of politics, hundreds of thousands, while you're inflicting hardship on people of this country. We're taking their benefits off them. We know there's children waiting on medical cards. They are leaving swing with families with bills they just cannot afford. And where are you protesting there, Joe? You're nowhere. You're just earning off the suffering of other people. And that's the way people look at it. That's why people are shoving cameras in your face, Joe. That's why people are very angry. That's why people are calling the president names. Because we had a political party in Fine Gael, and we'd sign a silence out of Labour when Phil Hogan threatened to turn poor people's water down to a trickle. There was nothing there. She said nothing. As far as we know, that's acceptable to you. So yeah, I think people are entitled to shout at you a little bit, Joe. I wouldn't condone language. I wouldn't condone guards being threatened, guards being abused or anything like that. But people feel abused. They feel abused when they're stepping up in that court this morning in Cork and they're being evicted out of their homes, and they look for where our politicians are. There's no Fianna Fáil members down in Cork today. There's no Fine Gael members down in Cork today. There's no Labour members down in Cork today to defend them people. So when you look at protesters and what they're doing, you can understand their anger and you can understand where it's coming from. We've met with the Gardaí out of the National Citizens Movement. We tried to take the sting out of the protest. We've tried to ask the guards. We met with Chief Superintendent Francis Clerkin. We asked them to respect people's right to protest outside their own home. We asked them to respect people's right to say no to a meter. We asked them to respect the people's right who are occupants in that home, who are owners of that home, who are tenants in that home. Now we asked them to give us that assurance, and it would take a lot of the heat out of what we've seen in protests. But of course, that assurance wasn't forthcoming. And we've gone and we've had that meeting. We talked about Joan Burton being held for 2 hours in Tallaght, and she wasn't able to leave. And I'd say to you again, all things should be equal in front of the law. Farmers held workers out of their 14 factories in this country for 3 days. But we all know the IFA and the big farmers, not the small farmers, the big farmers are friends of Fine Gael. So when you lock out workers out of their factories for 3 days, the guards do nothing. And the guards do nothing also. I heard Noreen O'Sullivan, when she met Joan Burton down in Templemore just recently, saying that she was very concerned about the tone of protests. She was standing beside, I think it was Mr. Noel Coonan, who accused protesters of being members of ISIS. So I wonder what she's concerned about his tone, because members of ISIS commit the most unspeakable atrocities. And this is what this idiot that calls himself a politician was accusing water protesters of being. I didn't hear Noreen say anything. What we'd like to see is equal treatment of everybody. We didn't hear Noreen the other day when it was mentioned that 350 people in Ireland had secret accounts within the HSBC bank. Noreen didn't come out and say that day that she was carrying out an immediate investigation. She was putting 6 or 10 Gardaí to investigate, to find out, to name, to try to prosecute them 350 people who are evading tax while people are being evicted out of their homes. And that's why we have protests at the level they're at. But Pat, you were hypocritical before the elections, and now you're hypocritical again. Because again, the worst things we seen were back in your day when members of your party walked into banks with balaclavas on and robbed them. That's what they did. They committed criminal offences, Pat. And I just wish for once, we see RTE always reminding Sinn Féin about things, violent episodes that's happened in the past. I'm not violent myself, I don't agree with them. But we need balance in RTE. Why doesn't RTE ask Pat Rabbitte and Eamon Gilmore and Mr. De Rossa about their involvement with the Workers' Party Sinn Féin? And did he bring up the assassination of Seamus Costello? Who was involved in that? Did Pat or Eamon know the people that carried out that? Well, they were close to them during that atrocity. I want to see a bit of balance from RTE. And lastly, I'll finish up. I would love to debate this issue with Pat Rabbitte or Eamon Gilmore at any time. I'll put myself forward to do so. But what we see again is, we know why protesters are out there. The protesters are out there, like Bernie used that features on that show last night, like Derek Bourne, like some of them there. They have friends of theirs that's threatened with evictions. They have friends of theirs whose children has emigrated. They have friends of theirs who cannot get a job, who are stuck on job bridge schemes that are useless, that are costing them money to go into work. So that's why they're angry. That's the reason why they're angry. And I know Lorraine Higgins was on the programme. But being honest with you, I don't figure Elaine Higgins to be any sort of political heavyweight at all. I think actually Lorraine should give up politics. Anyway, I'd just like to finish on that. I would love to debate with Joe or with Pat or with Eamon their involvement with the Workers' Party Sinn Féin in the past. And let's get a bit of balance into RTE, and let's ask the hard questions of Pat and Eamon when he appears on your show in the future.